And on the line, we have one of my favorite people to talk to from the House of Representatives from Michigan, Congressman Thaddeus McCotter. Thank you for joining us, Congressman. How are you tonight?
How are you, Wayne? Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. We haven't talked in a while, and I wanted to talk to you tonight about a couple of things. And you know me, I'm always open to, if you want to talk about something I didn't bring up, you can do that too. You know, it's a fair game around here. But I wanted to check in with you. Tomorrow is going to be 2 weeks till Election Day, and you are a very politically savvy individual, and you very seldom indulge in prognostication and all that sort of thing. But I want to push you a little bit. I want your assessment of the political landscape and kind of share with us the way the election is being seen through your eyes tonight. What are you seeing happening? Because I'm also looking at Obama's poll numbers are slightly up now or slightly down, or we're seeing a little bit of variation in the polls, and I don't think the polls are really even indicating what's really going on out in the communities. What do you think?
That's why I don't believe in polls. What happens with a poll, Wayne, is the people who plug in the assumptions can wind up with any numbers that they want. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be very careful where the source of the poll is, and you have to know what their assumptions were, how many people they assumed were Republican, how many were Democrats, things like that.
And also the timing of the poll. There was a poll that they were quoting yesterday on even on Fox and on CNN. They were quoting the same poll. I can't remember which poll it was, but it had been out there for about. It had been active, collecting data for about 3 weeks. How can you have that's not a snapshot?
No, even at its best, a poll is simply a snapshot in time. What you can tell, though, is by the activities of the president, the Democrats. They're getting increasingly desperate. Clearly, they're sensing something in the electorate that the middle has decided that the radical swing to a left-wing tax and spend and borrow and deficits as far as the eye is long was not what they bargained for in 2006 and in 2008, and that they want a check and balance in a government that they believe has cavalierly disregarded obtaining their consent for major legislation.
How are things in Michigan, election-wise?
Well, our economy is very difficult. It's not much better than it's ever been, but we're going to keep our teeth gritted and get through it. But we do understand, after 8 years of a failed governor, who's a Democrat, and her efforts to recreate our economy through the power of government, and someone who believes, like the president does, that that's a proper role for state or federal government, we know it doesn't work. So we're ahead of the country in that regard. Now, again, 2 weeks to go, we're going to see the Democrats get increasingly more desperate. I think that when you saw the president of the United States accuse a private organization of improper activity, of illegality, without a shred of evidence, I think that spells that the Democrats feel they're in a lot of trouble.
You're talking about the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, and in a time of economic recession, it does not bode well for our economy to see the president who embraces ACORN and basically attacks the Chamber of Commerce out there running around.
Well, and now figures are coming out, Congress. We're talking with Congressman Thaddeus McCotter from Michigan, Republican from Michigan. Other figures are coming out today now that show the Democrats have received over $1 million. They were talking about $500,000 approximately that was questionable, they thought, from the Chamber of Commerce going to Republicans. And now we're looking at well over $1 million that is coming from organizations that accept foreign funds now being looked at going to the Democrats. So,
well, look, this started in the 1990s with the Democrats taking communist Chinese money into their campaign.
How is that even legal?
It's not. And people were fined for it. But, the press buried it. And then you get into situations where the president himself did not have proper controls on his Internet contributions to show where they were coming from. So I think that, obviously, the audacity of tossing this red herring into the debate has reflected negatively on the Democrats. It shows their desperation. And I think that in the end, Wayne, vast majority of people know that the key issue is the economy. And the key issue about the economy is going to be whether or not government spending and government control is going to help speed a recovery, or whether it's going to continue to hold it back.
Well, if you can't, look, if you're running for office and you can't talk about policy because your policy doesn't work, and you can't talk about your record because your record has failed, what's left? All you can do is call somebody a witch.
Well, what the left does is they accuse you of what they're doing. And they hope that while you're busy trying to defend yourself against baseless accusations, the reality of what they're doing is lost upon people.
Sure.
And that's not going to be the case. The public, as you know, as all your listeners know, is more engaged in this election than at any time any of us can probably remember.
Well, with unemployment rates the way they are, Congressman, you can distract people by talking about all this bogus stuff and whether someone is a witch or whether someone is this or whether someone is, somebody's religion or who knows the junk that they're trying to pull out now. If somebody had an affair, I mean, that's what they want to talk about now because that's all they've got. So, but you can distract people with that under normal situation. You can distract people even today with that. But you can only do it for a very, very short attention span amount of time because after people turn off the television or put down the newspaper or magazine or turn off the computer and they go to the mailbox and realize there is no paycheck, suddenly they're not worried about whether someone has had an affair or whether someone joined a witch coven when they were in college or they're not worried about that. They're worried about jobs and they're worried about our economy. They're worried about the value of our dollar. They're worried about nuclear proliferation in Iran. They're worried about all these really important issues.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And it's not going to fool them. And what's, I think, particularly disheartening is the fact that the President of the United States is out there engaging in that very type of activity rather than doing his job. And it's all for partisan political reasons. And again, I say this with a heavy heart because, we in Michigan need an economic recovery, but policies that have been pursued have failed. And now what we're seeing is rather than a sober reassessment of failed policies by this president and his administration, his Democratic allies in Congress, instead what you're seeing is the full weight of the left-wing smear machine out there. And it's not going to work.
No, I don't. I can't imagine it working this time. I don't think. I'm really, really perplexed. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. I cannot believe that someone who is so politically savvy has shown himself to be so politically savvy to go from nowhere and win the Democrat nomination for presidency of the United States and beat out someone who had been everything but anointed for that position, and then win the presidency against a war hero, obviously, that's someone with some political savvy. How could someone who is so politically smart and has proven himself to be so politically smart through all of his career be so dumb to not realize what's really going on and that he is about to really take a dive?
Well, I would never say that he's dumb. What I would say is that he's, as a leftist, he doesn't understand that his policies won't work. And he's finding that out, and I think he's in shock that what he thought was going to be infallible absolutely proved to be the wrong thing to do. You remember, the president's not much older than I am. I'm 45. And the lessons that I learned from watching Jimmy Carter and watching Ronald Reagan seem to have been completely lost upon President Obama. And when you watch his agenda and you watch his foreign, domestic and abroad, you see that he's repeating all the same mistakes that if you'd have paid attention in the 70s and 80s, you'd have known Carter doesn't work.
I just talked to Dinesh D'Souza Friday. We had him in the studio, in fact, for 90 minutes. Have you read his book?
Nope.
Okay, you need to do it. It's called The Roots of Obama's Rage. It's the first. I'll tell you what, Congressman.
Well, I know what it's about. I know what his premise of his book is.
Yeah, it's all I can tell you is the first book I've ever read, or the first argument I've ever heard or been exposed to that makes sense somehow. He's not, it just makes sense. You understand how this human being, what makes this human being tick, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. I mean, like I said, I'm perplexed that he would make such political blunders. First of all, his choice to spend a year on health care jamming it down America's throats when that's not what people were even concerned about. We're worried about the economy tanking. We just spent $1 trillion in a stimulus package, and it wasn't working. What does he do? He drops everything and goes into health care for a year and uses all of his political capital, jamming it down our throats in back rooms in the middle of the night. We didn't want it. We have it. We still don't want it.
Well, it's not just the president. It's the nature of the left. The left comes out of the ideological cesspool that is Rousseau, and abstract ideas can be foisted by an individual upon a society that they believe needs to be broken down and then made dependent upon each other. You can go back to the roots of, Marx, Engels, everybody that on the left, especially the radical left, comes out of Rousseau. And so when you look at what they're doing, they thought the consent to the governed to them is not even a consideration, because they think they are so blindly convinced that what they're doing is right that they're going to make you find out that they're right. And you hear that when you hear quotes from Speaker Pelosi, like, well, we have to pass it so you know what's in it, or the continuing assault on the intelligence and integrity of the American people, and the president says, you just don't understand what's in it yet. And if the public has somehow been a miscommunication problem. This is clearly the apotheosis of the arrogance and elitism of the left. And that's what you see, and that's why the public wants a check and balance. Look, we've been talking about this before. The Republican Party has been nowhere near redemption in the eyes of the American public since 2008. But what they have noticed is that the Democrats, and with unbridled power, have a nasty habit of doing things that you don't want them to do, and they don't care